Can you walk me home? She whispered, her voice cracking as the marina lights died behind her. The docks went black in a way that wasn't natural, the kind of blackout that feels aimed at someone. Her driver was gone, her calls unanswered, and the emergency staff appearing in the shadows weren't there to help. Then the night shift mechanic stepped forward, calm, steady, like he'd already mapped the danger she didn't know she was standing in. By sunrise, the people trying to corner her would be the ones exposed. Before I show you the exact moment when the dock cameras flickered back alive and ruined her COO's entire plan. By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. This wasn't about a walk home. It was about power finally running out of places to hide. Gideon Hale had just locked the engine shed when he heard her voice tremble behind him. He turned, wiping grease from his hands, expecting a lost tourist or an entitled executive who'd mistaken him for valet. Instead, he saw fear, real, sharp, swallowing her composure. She looked like she didn't belong anywhere near the industrial side of the marina, yet here she was, clutching her phone like it had betrayed her. He didn't rush toward her. He didn't crowd her. He simply paused, squared his shoulders, and said, "All right, tell me what's going on." His tone wasn't dramatic or heroic. It was steady, the kind of calm born from someone who'd already lived through worse nights than this. She hesitated, scanning the empty walkway as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. "My driver was supposed to meet me at gate B. He's not answering. And the lights, they don't usually go out like that, right?" Gideon shook his head once. "Not like that, not in sections." He didn't explain how he knew. He didn't mention how grid failures behave, or how containment patterns look when they're intentional. He just watched the way her hands shook, not with panic, but with betrayal. The marina wind cut through the silence. Somewhere behind them, a metal shutter groaned closed. She flinched. Gideon's jaw tightened. Something was wrong here, and it wasn't the kind of wrong money could fix. "Which way's home?" he asked. She pointed toward the executive suites on the far side of the marina district, the part of the waterfront no one like him ever entered unless they were repairing something. But tonight wasn't about class divides or who belonged where. Tonight was about keeping someone safe, even if she didn't fully understand why she needed it. They started walking, her heels clicking unevenly against the metal grating. She kept glancing at her phone, watching messages light the screen, hesitation curling her shoulders inward. Every few steps, she slowed like she wanted to confess something, but couldn't yet trust the air. Gideon didn't rush her. He didn't ask. He allowed silence to work, the way it had in the Navy when talking too much could get you killed. As they reached the narrower service walkway, he felt her studying him, his worn boots, the grease along his forearm, the lunchbox clipped to his locker key. She saw a mechanic, nothing more. A man with calloused hands and a quiet life. A man who, she assumed, had no idea how to handle whatever danger was forming around her. But she didn't know the truth. She didn't know how many nights he had walked men through ambush routes, how many times he'd read danger by the way air shifted or lights flickered. She didn't know how much of his past he'd buried so his son could live in peace. Halfway across the walkway, another section of the marina went dark, clean, precise, controlled. She stopped breathing. Gideon didn't. "Keep moving," he said quietly, scanning the lines of sight, the blind corners, the timing of each blackout. None of this was random. Someone was narrowing routes, Someone was watching. "What is happening?" she whispered. "Not sure yet, but we're not going back the way we came." His voice didn't rise, didn't strain. It steadied her even as her pulse jumped. She followed him, gripping the railing, trusting the stranger, because fear made honesty simple. "I shouldn't have come alone," she murmured. He almost said, "Most people with power don't think they're in danger until it's too late." But he didn't. Instead, he kept his eyes forward, watching the marina shift like a chessboard being rearranged. A distant clatter echoed across the docks. Footsteps, equipment, he couldn't tell yet. But someone was positioning themselves. He angled them toward a maintenance corridor that executives didn't know existed. She blinked at the metal door. "Is this safe?" "Safer than the main paths," he replied. "Trust me." She did. Not because she knew who he was, but because everything else in her world had suddenly stopped making sense. And behind them, somewhere in the dark, the first pair of boots stepped onto the walkway they had just left. Gideon didn't look back. He didn't need to. He already understood they weren't alone tonight. Bootsteps echoed behind them, measured, confident, too synchronized to be from random dock workers. Gideon didn't turn. Turning meant acknowledging the threat too early, and he needed every second to read the environment before it tightened around them. He guided her through the narrow steel door into the maintenance corridor, letting it close with a soft hydraulic hiss. Not a slam, not a signal, just enough separation to buy time. She exhaled shakily, bracing a hand on the cold wall. Who are they?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. The corridor was a skeleton of pipes and wiring, humming faintly with leftover generator current. It smelled of metal, salt, and secrecy. Gideon stepped forward, checking blind corners the way muscle memory demanded. Every instinct told him this wasn't random security doing a sweep. This was pursuit. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't open the message. She didn't need to. Her eyes already knew what it meant. "My COO, he's been pushing for emergency transfer authority." I refused. Then suddenly tonight, "Don't say more yet," Gideon murmured. Not because he didn't want to hear it, but because panicked explanations ate time and clarity. She swallowed hard. "Are we in danger?" "We're not staying to find out," he said, guiding her farther down the corridor. Calm, controlled, unshakable, exactly what she needed to anchor herself to. The metal beneath their feet vibrated faintly, movement somewhere above them. He nodded toward the turn. "Stay close." She did, though each step felt like she was trying to match a rhythm she didn't understand. This part of the marina wasn't designed for people like her, executives who lived in glass suites and traveled in quiet convenience. The ET maintenance tunnels belonged to workers, to men like him, to the unseen. A flicker of guilt crossed her face. "I shouldn't have asked you for help. I didn't know it'd be like this." "If you hadn't asked," he replied quietly, "you'd still be standing on an open walkway when those men reached you." Her breath caught. A small tremor went through her hands again. Fear wasn't unfamiliar to him. He'd seen it in places far from home, where people had every right to tremble. But tonight, this woman wasn't afraid of violence. She was afraid of betrayal. They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met, one dark, one humming with electric transfer, one quieter, too quiet. Gideon lowered his voice. "They're trying to funnel us. We're not taking any path that looks easy." "How do you know all this?" she asked. He didn't answer. Not yet. She didn't need the biography. She needed survival. He chose the electric corridor, the one most workers avoided, because the pipes overhead sweated condensation and the hum of current felt unnerving. To him, it felt familiar, predictable, safer than silence. They walked quickly, footsteps softened by layers of dust and years of disuse. As they rounded a curve, her phone illuminated her face again, an incoming call. The name made her freeze mid-step. "It's him," she whispered, "my COO." The hum of the corridor grew heavier, like even the machines were waiting. "Answer," Gideon said, "but put it on speaker." Her hand shook as she tapped the screen. "Cressida," the man's voice said sharply. "Where are you? Security is reporting suspicious activity. You need to return to the administrative tower immediately." Gideon's eyes narrowed. Suspicious activity? Manufactured, more like. "I'm not coming back there," she said, trying and failing to keep her voice steady. "You have to. You're unsafe out there. If you cooperate now, we can resolve this cleanly." His tone carried manufactured concern stretched too thin. Gideon reached out and gently lowered her phone, ending the call. "He's buying time. He doesn't need you back there. He needs you cornered." Her face went pale. "I knew it. I knew something was off. But I didn't think he'd go this far." Gideon didn't respond. He was already listening. Somewhere in the distance, boots hit metal with more urgency now. Their window was shrinking. He guided her to a hatch door with peeling paint. "We need to get lower." "Lower?" she echoed. He spun the wheel lock and pushed the hatch open. "Maintenance basin. It connects under the marina. They won't know the layout." "You do?" she breathed. He met her eyes for a brief second. Steady. Prepared. Well enough. It wasn't bragging. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of answer that made her trust him more than she trusted her own security team. She followed him through the hatch, descending a narrow set of metal rungs. The basin below was dimly lit, water lapping softly against reinforced concrete. He scanned the space, mapping shadows and exit points. Up above, a distant clatter echoed down the corridor. They were close. "Is this where the workers come?" she asked quietly. "Not anymore," he said. "Old layout, abandoned after upgrades. But the exits still lead where we need to go." "And where is that?" "Someplace they won't expect, closer to public access. If we reach crowds, their leverage disappears." She nodded slowly, absorbing every word. Then she whispered, almost without meaning to, "Why are you helping me?" Gideon checked the direction of the draft, testing airflow from the next tunnel. Habit, instinct, training. "Because someone should," he said simply. Above them, the metal vibrated with heavier footsteps. He motioned for her to move. "Stay behind me. Keep quiet." For the first time that night, she didn't hesitate. She trusted him. And they stepped deeper into the dark, just as the boots reached the hatch they'd left behind. The tunnel tightened around them as Gideon guided her forward, the dim glow of emergency strips flickering weakly along the lower basin walls. Behind them, metal rang sharply, the hatch above slammed open. Boots thundered against the rungs, each strike echoing through the hollow chamber like a countdown. Cressida flinched at the sound, instinctively grabbing Gideon's arm. He steadied her with the smallest nod. "Move," he whispered, keeping his voice low but urgent. They waded through shallow water, their steps muffled but not silent. Every ripple seemed too loud. Every breath felt like it carried risk. Gideon scanned the ceiling, then the far end of the basin, calculating distances, where shadows pooled deepest, where sound carried least, where her fear might break her pace. "What do they want from me?" she murmured, voice trembling in the damp air. He didn't respond. Immediately, he pushed them toward a narrower passage branching off the basin, one barely tall enough for him to duck under the hanging pipes. "Control," he said finally. "Pressure you, make you sign something you shouldn't." Her breath hitched. "Emergency authority transfer. My COO, has been trying to force it for weeks. And tonight he figured out how." Gideon kept moving. The water deepened around their ankles, then thinned as they reached a metal grate. Gideon crouched, feeling its edges. Bolts had loosened from years of corrosion. Good, that made it easier. He looked back at her. "We go under." "Under?" Her eyes widened. "Into the drain? It connects to the dry dock pump chamber. They can't track us there. I've never... Just breathe, I'll guide you." Her panic was growing, but she nodded anyway. Trust was a fragile thing, Gideon knew, rarely earned through words, more often through necessity. And tonight, necessity was pulling her into places she never imagined she'd crawl through. He pried the grate up with a metallic groan and slid it aside. Cold air drifted out, dark, tight, unforgiving. A place she would never enter unless a stranger's calm told her she could. "You first," he whispered. "Feet forward, lie on your back, you'll float." Her throat worked as she swallowed hard, but she eased herself into the narrow water channel. It cradled her awkwardly, tugging at her clothing as she drifted. Gideon followed, lowering himself silently, letting the current carry them into the dark. Bootsteps hit the basin floor above them. Cressida stiffened, her breath catching in a tiny gasp. "Don't breathe fast," Gideon whispered behind her. "Noise travels." The footsteps split, one pair heading toward the tunnel they'd taken earlier, the other sweeping along the basin edge. A flashlight beam cut across the water, searching. She pressed closer to the channel floor instinctively. Gideon kept them moving with slow, controlled pushes against the concrete, drifting deeper into the unseen. How can you stay so calm?" she whispered, barely audible. "I've been in tighter spots," he said, "with worse outcomes waiting." She didn't miss the weight in his tone. Something in it made her chest tighten. Not fear, but realization. This man wasn't just skilled. He was carrying a past that had taught him to read danger like second nature. The drain sloped downward before leveling out. The air changed, warmer, drier. Gideon nudged her shoulder gently. "Sit up, we're clear from the basin." She pulled herself upright, dripping and shaking. Gideon rose behind her, scanning the chamber they'd entered. The pump room hummed softly, lit only by the glow of backup screens. Cressida hugged her arms around herself. "I don't understand how you knew where to go, or what they're doing, or how any of this makes sense." He stepped closer, not touching her, but grounding his presence. "Someone staged the blackout, someone who knows the marina grid. You said your COO has been pushing for emergency powers. This? It's leverage. Fear makes people sign things." Her expression crumpled, not from weakness, but from hurt. "I trusted him. I thought he was protecting the company. He's protecting himself." Gideon looked at the pump console. "And he'll keep pushing until you're cornered." She swallowed thickly. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." "You asked." The simplicity of that broke something in her. She blinked rapidly, wiping at her face as though she wasn't sure which emotion was trying to escape. He examined the control panel. "If I can reroute emergency power to this section, I can boot the surveillance feed. If their contractor teams were ordered to move in, there'll be footage. You can restore that? She asked, incredulous. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he rolled his sleeves, revealing the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years in environments where failure wasn't an option. His fingers moved across the panel, bypassing locks, scanning for backup grid ties. Cressida watched him, awe cutting through her fear. This was no mechanic, no ordinary night shift worker. "Who are you?" she whispered. He didn't look up. "Someone who knows how to work in the dark." As he reset a final switch, the consoles flickered, screens stuttering to life. Outside, somewhere far above them, alarms began to wail as the marina feed surged online. And the first image that loaded made Cressida's hand fly to her mouth. Her driver, restrained, surrounded by men wearing security insignia she didn't authorize. Proof, leverage, and a betrayal deeper than she imagined. She choked on a breath. Gideon steadied her again. "This is the start," he said quietly. "Not the end." She nodded slowly, her fear shifting into something sharper, resolve. And Gideon watched her change, watched the truth harden her spine. Because once someone sees the betrayal clearly, they stop running. They start fighting back. For a moment, neither of them moved. The grainy footage of her driver, tied, frightened, surrounded by men wearing her company's security patches, looped silently on the console screen. The pump chamber hummed beneath it, a mechanical heartbeat in the dark. Cressida's breath trembled as she stared. Shock had hollowed her features, but beneath it, a fiercer emotion began to surface. "They used my resources," she whispered. "My payroll, my security division." Gideon watched her closely. Fear was giving way to clarity, and clarity made people dangerous in an entirely different way. "That's why they cut the lights," he said. "They needed control without witnesses." Her jaw tightened. "And without legal traces." He nodded once. "But they didn't expect the backup grid to still be functional." She turned to him, eyes sharp, voice low. "How did you even know where to find this? How did you know the systems would reroute?" Gideon didn't answer right away. Instead, he kept scanning the screens, checking for movement beyond the basin feeds. "Because these layouts follow older naval maintenance designs," he said finally. "Different context, same logic." "You've worked with systems like these before?" He kept his tone even. "Something like that." She didn't push. Maybe she sensed that some answers were earned later. Maybe she already suspected his past was far heavier than he let on. For now, she followed his focus back to the footage. The men held her driver near the admin dock, strategically placed between the executive wing and the board tower. Perfect leverage, perfect pressure point. Her COO hadn't just tried to scare her. He'd staged a corporate hostage situation using her own infrastructure. She swallowed, anger stirring beneath her grief. "I trusted him." "That's why he assumed tonight would work," Gideon said quietly. "People like him weaponize trust." A metallic thud echoed overhead, far in the basin, but closing in. Cressida stiffened. Gideon's posture shifted instantly, shoulders angling, breath steadying. Danger was approaching, using the same tunnels they'd taken. He checked the pump room's secondary exit, a low steel hatch leading to a narrow walkway above the water filtration vault. Rusted, heavy, but still usable. "We're moving," he said. "They're sweeping sectors faster than expected." She pulled herself together, nodding without argument. The shock of betrayal had steadied her, not shattered her. Good. He needed someone who could follow instructions without freezing. He pushed the hatch open just enough to listen. No footsteps, no voices, just the distant churn of machinery and the soft drip of condensation falling into water. "Up," he said, offering his hand. She took it, letting him lift her onto the walkway. The air here was cooler, sharper, carrying the tang of treated seawater. The lights overhead flickered unpredictably, emergency grid struggling against manual interference. Gideon motioned for silence. They advanced along the narrow path, footsteps dampened by rusted steel. "Once we reach the filtration vault," he whispered, "there's an access ladder to the old observation deck. From there, we can reach a public walkway." "And then?" she asked. "Then the people following you lose their advantage. They can't pull anything with crowds around." "But they'll still try to find me." "Yes," Gideon said, "but we won't be hiding. We'll be choosing the ground." They continued along the walkway. With each step, her fear sharpened